Okay, John Wallace, you're here on Soulful 7 Conversations, which is such an honor. I think we've known each other 26 years.
Okay.
If I'm factoring back the numbers, and actually we didn't even know each other, but we were connected before because your father wrote a recommendation for me to get into Swami.
Oh, wow. That I didn't know.
I will say over the last 26 years, you are steady and kind would be my two things to say about you. Steady and kind and tall. So I've invited you because you have gone through 2 years of absolute struggle, and you are a walking sign of redemption for me. We were at a basketball game last fall, and you walked into the gym with your 2 new legs. And I turned to David and I said, I feel like Hope just walked in on a cane. Like, to see you, I feel like you should be wearing a t-shirt wherever you go, and it should just say, I am Hope. And I don't know if you feel that way about you, but when I look at you, that's how I feel. Like, everyone always jokes about that I pick books because I don't mind if there's struggle, and I don't mind if there's adversity, and I don't mind if there's heartbreak, but I always want redemption at the end. I want to feel like the characters had redemption. And so just for everyone that is listening and watching, you went in for where you were told was a routine.
Right.
Yes, it was heart surgery, so it was surgery, but that it was routine, so many done every single day, and that you were going to be just totally fine. You're a healthy 43-year-old or 42-year-old when 42. This happened.
43.
43.
Yeah,
okay.
43, yeah.
And so this should not be a problem. You went in and it just was a snowball effect. Like, I feel like every single text and email that we got after you went in for the surgery, it was like it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So I don't know if you want to explain what happened. I mean, I know you were you flatlined. You were in a coma for how many weeks?
Yeah, about 4 weeks.
4 weeks in a coma.
3.5.
I came up to the hospital, I think 3 times during that time, when you were in the hospital. One of the times you were on the ventilator. The other 2 times, one you were unconscious or you were heavily sedated because you were coming out of it. And then the 3rd time you were in the bed, not moving, but you were alert and talking.
Okay.
I saw your mother, who was always there, your wife, who I find to be like a superhero. You have this incredible family. You have 4 young children under the age of 12. And you had strokes?
Yeah, I had, my chart is about this thick, if you go back and look at it. But best I can tell, I had several what they call micro strokes throughout the process. What else? So MRSA, Pseudomonas infection of some sort, several different infections that were major infections, I guess, and a lot of excessive bleeding where they couldn't stop the bleeding. And I mean, I think the core of it was they just couldn't get me awake, really, into my right mind, so they had to put me down, and then kind of everything just went downhill from there. And
I mean, you were as close to the edge. I mean, didn't your doctor tell you, like, I've never seen anyone that was able to live?
Well, after my doctor, I asked him, my recovery doctor, I said, because you hear all the stories, right? People, and people are coming in saying, oh, you look great, and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, man, I must have looked really bad if I looked great.
You were scary.
Yeah. And,
it was like one of those portraits. I mean, when I walked into the hospital room and you had all the tubes and everything, and then your mom was sitting in the chair. I don't know. It was.
Yeah. So I asked him, I said, what really happened? And he was like, well, I'm going to have to go back and read through everything and just kind of to digest it all, because this was a few days in, and he was just kind of getting used to taking care of me. He came in the next day and he was like, all I can say is you were as close to death as you could get without actually dying. So whatever that.
Well, flash forward, so you wake up, and I'll never forget when we got the text, and then not sure what you would be like brainwise,
Right.
because you did have the
I think
stroke.
that was the big fear.
Yeah, I think everybody was just kind of holding their breath. And then your funny sense of humor and everything proved itself that John was back. But then it's like it even got worse, right?
Well,
because
my feet were blue at the time and had been, somehow, and there's a number of different theories on, exactly what happened, but lost circulation at some point and blood flow, and that damaged them. But there was hope that there was a thought that, hey, this shouldn't be a big deal. We should be able to get you through that. And then that turned out not to be the case. I started what they call hyperbaric treatment, where you go in for deep, it's pure oxygen. They sink you down 3 atmospheres deep, effectively. And like within a week, my feet went from blue to black. I mean, just like pieces of charcoal.
So eventually we flashed forward, and you went from doing every single thing you could possibly do to save your legs. And then when they said you're not going to save your legs, you bravely went into the surgery, and they removed all the way up to a little bit below your kneecap, right?
About 9 inches below the knee.
And then you had to heal.
Yeah.
And then you got your prosthetics, which I'm looking at you right now, with both of them on.
Right.
And you're moving and grooving like you do.
We're getting there.
The reason that, you've been through it, like you've been in the valley, you've had to be so brave and so courageous, not to mention you are a father of 4 children and you have a wife who have had to walk this path with you too. I'm very interested for everyone that's listening who also is either going through something right now or has someone really close to them that's going through something right now, your words of wisdom. Like, I know you probably don't see yourself as making it to the other side, but by seeing you right now, in my mind, it feels like you saw your way through.
Right.
And I know that every day is a struggle. We've talked about the logistics of your new life and, how it works with your prosthetic legs and everything. But again, I say, when I look at you, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like hope right there. With that said, though, struggle, like really it tests everything in your being. It tests the way you look at yourself. It tests the way that you look at God and faith and what matters in your life and who you really love and can count on. And it's like it rips the Band-Aid off. And suffering, in some ways, I think of Paul, where it said, the scales fell off of his eyes. And I know in my own life when I've had struggle or suffering or obstacles, it's a little bit of the silver lining that it just kind of rips the scales off, and you finally see as you're meant to see the world and yourself and God. So I'd love to start from that place. At the dinner table last night, the kids and David asked 3 questions that were outside of my questions. But I think it will start, David's question was, how has the last 2 years tested your faith?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. Significantly, I'll say. So when I first woke up, and then, that was somewhat of a gradual process for me to kind of regain my bearings. But there was a lot of, my family, telling me, this is such a great answer to prayer, you're alive and you're great and everything. And I'm laying in the hospital bed looking at my feet, they're blue and black, going like, and I just wasn't there for all the prayers and, the support that I got from, which was tremendous, as I've come to find out, from the community, people like you, David, and certainly, just so many people that the family got, and the prayers, multiple prayer groups all around the country and in Birmingham and my church, So it was a great answer of prayer for everybody, but not me, And so...
Because all you knew when you went in was you were a healthy guy.
You're right.
Who had like a congenital heart thing that had to be fixed.
The reality was I thought there was a 99% chance that I was going to live and everything was going to be fine. And there was a 1% chance that I was going to die. I didn't factor in sort of the in-between,
Right.
So Yeah. I mean, it tested my faith pretty tremendously. And I'm not going to be, the reality is there were times when I was in the hospital and I felt pretty far from God, to be honest. I had a friend of mine and a counselor of mine who I was just telling him about it, and he said, kind of feel like your prayers aren't getting past the ceiling. And I was like, that's it. Really just, I'm praying, I'm trying to pray, trying to read the Bible, but it just, for whatever reason, it just felt really distant for a while. And I think that's quite frankly where a big part of where community and church comes involved, because, and certainly Christ as well, because you need people to intercede for you,
right.
Because that's something like this is going to test your faith. It's just, I don't think there's any way around it. And it's not, I had faith. I mean, I did have faith.
You didn't lose your faith.
I didn't lose my faith, but I felt disconnected from it to some
Isn't that
degree.
kind of a scary place to be, where you feel disconnected to God, especially when you're in this awful place of such vulnerability.
Yeah.
And when you don't know what's happening or what is going to be the next step forward.
Yeah.
Is a scary place to be. It
is. And I kind of expected it to kind of, because you're thinking like, this is it. This is when I really need you, God.
Right.
Right. But I always held on to a sense that even if it wasn't super prominent, but it certainly was in the back of my head, that there was a plan, that God had a plan for this. What it was, who knows? Still don't know 100%, and that God can use this for good. So
you did believe that God would use this for good.
Yeah. I mean, I won't say that I never wavered from that, but certainly that was pretty much in my thoughts and in my heart, but there were, you wonder what,
Right.
So
I know it's like the seminary professor said to me one time, you are going to go through periods in your life where God is going to be facing away from you and all you see is God's back.
Right.
And God doesn't turn. Mm-hmm. And all you're waiting for is for God to turn. But you are going to have seasons, and faith is believing that God will turn.
Right.
So in those seasons where you're looking and all you see is God's back, just that hoping that eventually, somehow, some way, God will turn it around.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, God's timing is perfect, and it's not your timing, and that's very hard no matter what you're going through, whether minor or major. That's a hard thing to accept a lot of times. And it doesn't mean it's going to be this week or next month or next year, or, the reality is this, I believe God's plan, who knows what it is for all this, right? And I may never know. I have some thoughts, but that's my sort of, pitiful human understanding of things, right?
Do you say though? I mean, do you articulate to God? I feel like clearly you saved my life. My life is, so you must have something that you're hoping that I'm going to reveal, you've clearly already revealed to me. So in the sense of, someone just seeing you and thinking, oh my gosh, there is hope. Mm-hmm. I just see John Wallace, and I believe that I don't care how bad it is, he's a walking example of hope. So that in itself, I hate for you to have gone through that to give me that reveal. And I'm sure every single person that comes in contact with you feels the same way. You're such a humble guy, period. So you were like that before, and still, every time I see you, you're very frank about how you're feeling, but it's always with such humility.
Well, you're very nice to say, and you're not the only person who's said that. I've had a lot of people, and that's one of the benefits of I've said this before. It's hard to hide what's happening. So
right.
People are, it's not like I'm struggling with anything inside, or at least that people can see. And so, the people are encouraging me often, and so that's helpful. Mm-hmm. But I've had people. I mean, my sister texted me or emailed me the first day I went back to church, and I was in my wheelchair, and that somebody, and I can't remember, a friend of hers who's going to have a baby, but I can't remember the details, but it was a tough situation for that person. Had texted my wife or my sister and said, "Hey, saw Johnny. Really, just seeing him come, it was just such an inspiration and gave me such a sense. I mean, very similar to what you said, and that's kind of stuff that's humbling to hear, and that's hopefully part of the plan,
right?
Part of God's plan.
Well, and I'm the first to say, I mean, this business of being human. Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't until I was more in my middle age that I realized how difficult it is to be human. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just, and I've had some struggles, and now you're having struggles, and we all, it's like the universal condition. We're each going to suffer and struggle.
That's been one of the biggest things for me. It's just that, when I started, and I literally was thinking when I came out of everything, and I'm in the hospital, and you got a lot of time to yourself when you're stuck in the hospital, but and people are coming to visit, and people are talking about, and I hear so-and-so's brother died, and so-and-so's got cancer, and so-and-so's wife's got cancer, and so-and-so's, spouse died. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what the heck happened to the world while I was out? And then I kind of started to realize it wasn't the world that changed. It's that I'm starting to realize that bad stuff has not only happens a lot, but has happened to a lot of people that I know and that I love, that I, then that I care about, that I hadn't even registered. I mean, yes, I was aware of it, but I just didn't understand the impact of it,
Yeah, and I guess being, working and doing a little bit of pastoral ministry and stuff, I say I'm in the trenches a lot. Yeah. So I'm in the trenches. I'm at that edge that you've been between life and death. And so I see it's like at my fingertips, just what people are going through. Yeah. And you told me one time, I think we were in the grocery store, and you just said, in some ways it's a gift because what I'm going through, you see. Like, you see my 2 prosthetic legs. Yeah. And now I'm realizing, though, how many people are going through things that you don't see because they're inside. And I'll never forget, I was walking down 67th Street. I think I was either going to Sloan Kettering or I was leaving Sloan Kettering. And it was just like at rush hour, and there were so many people passing me on the street. And I just had this revelation, here I am, at the worst. I am in such a fragile state. I have no idea what the next step is going to look like. I am afraid. I am exhausted. And all these people are just going about their lives. But then we all are going through things, and we pass each other every day, and we don't realize, if you don't have the 2 prosthetic legs, what's really going on in all of our lives. And, so my next question is, So I knew you before. It's almost kind of a before and an after. Mm-hmm. And I know you've always been a faithful person. You're an incredible dad and husband. How has your perception of God changed?
Yeah.
And are you certain God exists?
Right. I think certain is a tough word, or a strong word. Mm-hmm. But I believe that comes back to the faith. I don't know. I think my perception of God hasn't changed too much. I mean, I know I have a hard time believing that all of this is, that a tree from an acorn, and us from 2 cells, 2 cells to who we are, that's just
by chance,
an accident,
right.
And so that's I have so I feel like there is a greater power, and I feel pretty certain that that's the case.
Well, looking back over the last 2 years, can you see instances where you say, you know what, it's too mysterious, it has to be divine something?
Absolutely.
You know, like signs of something where you're like, you know, only that could happen by something greater than myself.
Absolutely. But what happens is I relate it to myself in so many instances. Wow, I can't believe I met that person and that wasn't that. And that has to be God's plan to put us together or whatever the thing may be. And so I think it's important for us also to not just relate it all to yourself, but like to the greater picture. And I think the big story that God has for us is very hard, or for humanity and for this earth, is the greater story that's going on is we don't really know. You know, and I think it's important though for us to pull back and try to look for the bigger picture, if you will, versus, because if you relate it just to the stuff that happens to you, then all of a sudden something bad happens to you, and it just kind of creates kind of a, well, what? No, why is this happening? You know,
right?
I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. You know, I just sometimes wonder if when we do go through, or where we feel like life kind of grabs us by the collar and says, okay, wait, I'm going to show you some things, and I'm going to teach you some things,
Absolutely.
And you're going to earn some wisdom right now. Why that has to happen in suffering, why it has to happen with us suffering heartbreak, you know, physical, mental, spiritual distress, any of those things. But for whatever reason, that's what gets our attention. That makes us see what really matters. And I don't know, I guess when you've gone through this, has it allowed you to, I don't know, distill down some truths about your life? Like some truths about who you are, John Wallace, and who you want to be, and who God is, and what faith actually looks like in praxis for you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, perspective is the word that really kind of comes to mind. You know, it provides a lot of perspective in terms of what's important to me personally, but also what I think is sort of a greater truth in terms of what's important in life. You know, I mean,
what are some of those?
I think, you know, this is going to sound somewhat cliche, but, you know, relationships and with the people around you, the people that you love and the people that love you. And, you know, one of the things I feel like I've seen is that, you know, we here on earth are, you know, and I feel like there's maybe some biblical verse that ties into this, but we are the hands of God, ultimately. You know, we are the ones who can do.
Right. Well, and I believe that. Like when we say made in God's image, I feel like God has said, okay, guess what? So I have wired you with this incredible capacity for love and compassion and mercy and the ability to actually forgive. And I've actually given you muscle so that you can use your physical hands to make things happen. Like get out there and redeem.
Yes.
You know, help people resurrect, help people rise, tell people that they're loved, make them feel bigger than they actually are, because really they are that big. Like they are these incredible, remarkable human beings, and you need to tell them that. It's like we're mirroring God out in the world.
Right, and it's really easy to not do that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I can go many days, John, where I'm mirroring, the only thing I'm mirroring is Farrell. But I know when I do mirror, like what I would say is like my truest self or the divine in me, I mean, that's just like when all the pieces of the puzzle seem to fit into place. It's like when I feel I have this lightness of being, I'm not as anxious, I'm more certain about God's presence and this larger plan. I mean, as I've gotten older, you know, I when things are going well for Farrell, it's when I'm listening and I'm watching for the signs. So like when someone introduces me and I'm like, wow, what a connection. Or I run into someone and it like spurs a new direction for me. Or like all these connections, if I pay attention to them, they do seem to move me in a direction that I'd like to be going, but more importantly, it seems like God would like me to be going. The problem is I forget about, you know, how grateful I am for my life and where I am. And I get caught up in the whirl of busyness and jobs and responsibilities, and I forget. And so I miss chances all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's like you go through suffering, and it's like you have to stop at the stop sign, and you're not going anywhere. And God's going to tell you, like, okay, like, start opening your eyes again.
Right.
And seeing what I need you to see.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, see what I need you to see.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think, the things that you think about, when you're going through the struggle it's not the mundane, petty stuff in life, that you deal with most of the time. It's people, relationships. A big part of what happened to me was like, how can I love other people? Now I still really struggle heartily with that, mightily, just with, do I have time to do that? Or, do I know that person well enough? Or gosh, I'm supposed to do this for work or do this for family or whatever, all of that's important. It's just the juggling of all that's
right,
really important. And then also experiences is the important experience, and experiencing that with people. So, the things that really kind of came to mind were, and the things that I really cherished even in the struggle, were the moments that I had with the people that I loved. It sounds, my 5-year-old daughter, Annabelle, she and I was home for a long time after I got out of the hospital.
Right.
She was in school for 3 days a week. Didn't go to school till 9:30, and we got pretty tight.
Yeah.
And that's a great blessing, to have that time with her, and just to be home with my family, and at 4:00 when they come home from school, and I wasn't doing anything.
Right.
I was pretty useless, but just to be there with them was, just don't take that for granted.
Right.
That was a really special time, and that's the other thing on the take for granted stuff. You just cannot. It's again very cliche to say, but it is so easy to take stuff for granted. And
it is, and like time, and how how you can waste time.
Yeah.
It's always this wasting time versus elevating time. Like elevating time and making it feel like it is sacred and precious, and
be in the moment.
Be in the moment. I know it is all these cliche things, but they are so true.
They're so true. I mean, I was up at Sewanee a few weeks ago, and with some friends, and they all went out. I couldn't go and hike. They were hiking out to Piney Point, and I can do a lot of things, but I was a little daunted by a 3-mile hike, and so I stayed at home, and I laid down on the back porch on the sofa, and the house is in the middle of the woods, and the breeze was blowing through the woods. It was a beautiful day like today, and the sun was shining. They were gone for forever. I fell asleep. They still weren't home when I woke up, and I just sat, and I was like, I was at first kind of anxious,
Right.
But then I was like, this is really nice. Just enjoy this, and just.
It
sounds weird. But just enjoy, like, you're not going to get this maybe for another 6 years.
It's so true. Because you have 4 children, I have 6
Right.
children. So the idea that we actually just got to sit in quiet in nature is such a precious gift.
Yeah.
Right? It makes you...
And I see, for me, and this sounds kind of self-serving, but I see people walking in flip-flops, and I'm like, I'd really like to be able to walk in flip-flops right now.
Right.
Don't take that for granted.
I know. It is. It's like counting it is always the simple things, right?
Yeah,
the simple,
exactly.
ordinary things. Well, there's always this question of what is faith? Like, what is faith? And we live in the Bible Belt where faith is a word that gets thrown around all the time.
Yeah.
But when you are in the trenches and you're holding on for dear life, that to me is when we need to have that conversation. Like, so what is going to help me, endure and all the dark nights of the soul? And then what is going to help me prevail? And is that faith? Is it faith? What you said earlier, is it faith in that there is a God, or is it the presence of love? Is it a higher, crazy, remarkable, creative consciousness, the divine, the creator? And then what is it that holds it all together, or holds us together, and allows us to kind of see ourselves through this human spiritual experience?
Yeah, I mean, it is faith, I think. You have to have faith. And I think faith is, but it's okay. Faith is going to waver, and yet I think you have to know that that's okay. You know, you're going to have questions, and I think God honors questions and doubt. I really do.
I do too.
But you have to have it, and you have to have faith that there is a higher power. I think that there is God, and then you have you just have to have faith that you're going to come out on the other side of it.
Whatever that looks like.
Whatever that looks like.
Right.
There's a I don't know if you're familiar with the Stockdale paradox.
I'm not.
So
educate me.
I read a book called Good to Great, which is familiar to a lot of people. But Admiral Stockdale was captured, POW, in Vietnam, and was there for a long, long time. I don't know all the details, but obviously very, really testing situation. You know, beaten and tortured and all that kind of stuff. And so, and he got out after, I don't know how long, but a long time. And they kind of asked him, how did he kind of keep it all together? And he's like, I saw so many men who broke and were really broken by the end of it, because they were like, we're going to get out by Christmas. And then Christmas would come, and it's still there. Well, it's going to be Easter. When Easter comes, it's gone. It's still in there. You know, we're going to get there, but it's going to be Labor Day or whatever. And it would come and go on. He said, you have to, he said I forget exact words, but something along the lines of, you have to have faith that you are going to come out on the other side, while at the same time coming to grips with the current circumstances that you're in right now, and dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's...
because you still, I mean, day to day, I know what it is, a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, your whole life has been changed. And so just the logistics,
you
get to walk, right? And you're not where you want to be, but you get to walk now, which you didn't know. There was a time where you weren't sure if that was going to happen, or if you'd be in a wheelchair, and now you can. But the logistics of, like, I remember your wife said that you did this crazy act of kindness. You were going out on a date, and you showed up in pants because it's such a big deal for you to put pants on over your prosthetics. But that was you showing her that you were, it's just a gesture of love. Like, I'm putting on pants because we're going to be fancy to go out to dinner. I'm taking you on a date, which you haven't done in like years. And it was just, but so just your day-to-day life. I believe it was Faulkner who said, the secret to the human being is their ability to adapt. And, none of us as human beings want change. Like, don't we struggle with that? We get up right to the edge, and it's like this muscling, like, oh my gosh, I do not want the change. And the people that are the most balanced and peaceful and seem like they have their grounding in the world are the ones that are okay with adapting. With situations, with relationships, with their future. Like, just saying, okay, you know what, I'm not going to be pretty, but I'm going to adapt to it. And being willing to adapt.
That's right. And I think it's for me, people have asked me, how do you stay positive and all that kind of stuff. And my question is, what's the alternative?
Which on the flip side of that, it's like, well, so why do you believe in God? And especially when you're in that dark place where you're like, I feel like it's a dark wall all the way around me, and there's no way out, and not even a shard of light. But then the alternative, to think that you're in that place and there isn't a God, is a much scarier place to be in, right?
That's true. Absolutely.
Going back to what we were saying earlier, though, because I want you know, I have said this, and I know you've just said this now, that there are places of doubt and fear and anger and disappointment in God. Mm-hmm. And those times are okay. Yes. Like, I feel like when we go back to the definition of faith, like, faith doesn't have a leg to stand on if it's not authentic, mm-hmm. and it's not one that you can doubt. Mm-hmm. And have moments of, I have not heard from you, seen you, or felt your presence in a long while.
Yeah.
And just say, you know, calling a spade a spade.
Yeah, I think again, I think God, you know, he's a lot bigger than us, right? And so I think he understands that, and I think he honors that, and I think that's kind of how you get to a better place, is going through that in a lot of instances. You know, you kind of you come to a greater understanding of God and a greater understanding of yourself, I think.
Well, I don't know why this, and I don't know, you tell me if you resonate with this, but I don't know why it has to be that we have to struggle or suffer disappointment or experience like terrific vulnerability to actually like be better versions of ourselves. Right? Like, why does it have to happen that way? But I tell you, every single time I'll run into the wall, it's like I come away and, like a revelation, you know? It's like either I see something a little more clear, or I don't know, it's just like a stronger, better version.
Yeah, I think that's the answer, right? I mean, that's why. That's where he wants us to go.
Well, and I think it was Richard Rohr that said, you know, be okay with the stretching, the breaking, the mending process. Like, be okay with that, because the ultimate goal is you were started from a place of love, mm-hmm. and you're in a place of love, and you are going towards a place of love. So it's all good for you.
That's right.
Right? It's all good. Hard to hear, though, when you've lost someone.
In the dark times.
Or you've lost your legs, or you've lost a dream, or you've lost something. It's hard to, and I guess that's where we go back to this, you know, that steel rod on the inside.
I think that's, and I think it's just taking it day to day. Mm-hmm. That was something my father, he when he was in his 30s, and I forget the exact age, his first wife died and left him with 4 young children who were all under the age of, let me think about this. I mean, they were all within 6 years of each other, and all under the age of, certainly under the age of 12, I think. And he's been very helpful through all this, you know, just kind of really, he's very private about that, but he's, you know, talked a lot about it with me, just in terms of kind of how he walked through that and how difficult that was. And, you know, one of the things he said to me, he said, you're just going to have to take it day by day, and you're going to have to get up and work through that day, and then you're going to work through the next day, and then you're going to work through the next day, and one day it's going to be better.
Right. Oh, John, say it again. That's exactly what you know, what we all need to hear. It is that putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's hard to hear, though.
It is hard to hear.
Well, when is that? And you don't know.
Well, and you know, David has said, you know, a lot of life is about muscling through. Mm-hmm. And then I would add to what David says but you get these glimmers of such incredible, like, beauty and showings of love and signs of grace and hope that you're like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, I'm going to put that one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And you're going to have days that suck.
Right. I know. Yeah. Where you don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Right? And put the one foot in front of the other.
That's right. And that's okay.
And that's okay, I know.
Yeah.
You do. You just have to be where you are.
Yeah.
With that said, if you were talking to someone right now who was in the midst of a storm or felt like they were in this dark, dark valley, what would you tell them right now?
I think it would be what I said before. You know, it's going to get better. There is a God. He has a plan for this. You may not see it now. You may not ever see it, but there is a plan. And you just have to, so I would, tactical stuff like pray, being prayerful. And then
Is that like a daily discipline for you?
Discipline is a good word for it because I'm not very good at discipline, but yes.
Okay.
If you're in the valley right now, just deal with what you're in right now, get through the days, again, day by day, and one day it will get better. You will get through it.
Because we believe, it's believing that in a God that does always redeem.
Yeah. Right?
Redeem situations. Resurrects, whether it's a really small part of your life or a big part of your life. For many, you got a second chance. Like you were brought back from, in many ways, body, mind, and spirit, you were resurrected and given this new life, John. Yeah. And do you feel the profundity of that?
Not 100%.
You don't?
No,
okay.
Not 100%. But, my nurse...
Like, I just look at you and you're like so handsome in your blue vest and your shirt and your smile. And I just know where you've been.
Yeah.
And that in itself, and I guess that's why I keep going to this. You should wear the t-shirt that says, I am hope. Because, I know even with Charlie's cancer, it was a full year of just the day-to-day grind. Mm-hmm. But then it was like 5 years after that before we even started to feel normal.
Yeah.
And so I think people need to see time is not, we have to let go of the time thing. As human beings, we just so need that time. I want to see this happen now. I need this to be over now. I need to know what's going to happen next. What's 20 pages ahead of me? And it's just not how God works. And, I look back, it's so easy to look back in the rearview mirror. But I look back on my life over the last, Charlie is 15 years from treatment. Mm-hmm. And
that's amazing.
So 15 years ago, 16 years ago, he was diagnosed. And I could not in any way, shape, or form have created the life that I have lived over the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. In no way I could have ever imagined it or created it or willed it for myself. It is so beyond that it only has to be because of God.
Yeah.
Because I know Farrell could not have designed this.
Right, absolutely.
How this looks for me.
Yeah.
And it still doesn't mean that when I'm feeling the pinch, of life, that I forget that. And I'm in the throes. Absolutely. And I'm feeling like I'm walking on the hot coals and I cannot see where I'm going to get off. Mm-hmm. That feeling where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get off the hot coals. I'm just walking them. That I don't sometimes forget that. Mm-hmm. And that's when people that love us have to help us through, hold our hands through.
The other thing that I was going to say about the people in the valley, the other thing that I would say is, ask for help and then accept help.
Right.
A lot of people don't ask, and then a lot of people don't accept help. Mm-hmm. And you've got to.
Well, and I will say that
people want to help. That's how.
They do. I
that's
know it's
what
how it
we're
works.
all here for.
I know, to help one another, but I don't know if it's ego or pride or what it is. But I'm a strong person, and I feel like I can do a lot. I can do a lot of stuff myself, mm-hmm. and so I never want to ask for help because I figure I can just do it myself, and other people need it more. But that's just not what God wants. God wants me to say, "Hey, John, you know what? I really could use you right now."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a dear friend that's going through cancer right now. She's my age, and she told me the other day that her husband went to a friend, and he's a very shy guy, and he went to a friend and he said, I need you right now. Mm-hmm. I need you to stand up for me. I need you to be there for me. And I know this is going to be really hard, and I have no idea what it looks like going forward, but I need you to be with me. And I was so in admiration of him, because a lot of times it's the men that have the hardest time.
Absolutely.
Saying, you know what, I cannot do this. Yeah. I need your help.
I told a friend not too long ago, lost a parent, and I was telling him, so-and-so, they're going to come to the funeral. He's like, please tell them not to come. They don't need to come. I was like, dude, they want to come, just let them come. Let them come love on you,
right.
know?
I know. We have to show up for one another.
Yeah. So,
I know. I think I know who your friend was. And it was packed, and that makes you feel
right.
that you're not alone.
Yeah. And so I think, and that's hard for people to do, to accept help. I've gotten a lot better. I think people think I'm probably a freeloader now. Like, let me get that. I'm like, okay.
No. John. That is so, okay. Right. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, because I saw you on the ventilator, you've been given a second chance. Right. So what are you doing differently?
Well,
so for all of us that have not just been brought right up to that edge, and so we're all going through our routines, and we're all thinking we have so much time.
Yeah.
And see, that's the misnomer. We all believe that there's always going to be more time. Yeah. And it's just not true. We have much shorter time than we think we have here. So you've been given this time. Mm-hmm. What are you doing with it? How are you changing? What are essential in your life? What matters?
First of all, let me start with, you asked me, do I feel like I've had a second life or that kind of stuff? And I will say that my occupational therapist, who was an angel in the recovery hospital, wonderful lady named Gwendolyn. She was just, oh man, was she a rock. And, I can't say enough about caregivers and the importance of them and what they can really mean to people, because... And
we should come back to this because there are these people that come into our lives. Yeah. So finish what you're saying.
But I was going to say, she said, one of the first things she said, well, whew, I've read your chart and you should not be here. So that's the one person who said that and the doctor, who I'm like, okay, I guess I really was pretty close to the edge, and so how do I live my life differently? Like, I'm going to come back around to a lot of the themes that we've already talked about that are going to sound very cliche, but I'm trying and not always succeeding at, being more aware of the struggles that other people go through and are going through or have gone through, and then trying to do something for them, or offering at the very least, or even just praying for them,
And tell them you're praying for them.
And tell them that.
See, I think that's, it's, part of my job is to reach out to people and not be afraid to go into the vulnerability and the despair and the upset and just walk right into it. Yeah. And I feel like that's a gift that's been given to me, which a lot of it is just being a wounded healer. I've been there before and feeling like you can be. But I think sometimes people think that they shouldn't, or it's awkward. Oh. And really what people want when they're going through something is for you just to say, how are you doing? Yeah. Like, just call it. Just go right up and say, how are you doing?
The people that helped us, or that really reached out, and this is not universal, but so many of the people that loved on us, people I never would have expected, ever.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. So you should speak on that, like the unexpected.
Yeah. So people I never expected to do it, and some people just unexpected and really humbling and overwhelming. And then I look at a lot of the people that did, who were unexpected, and a good chunk of them had gone through something really tough themselves, and they, I realized, part of the reason they did that was not just, yes, out of the goodness of their heart and that they're good friends, but they understand what it means. Right. And the impact that it can have. I mean, just, it's very overwhelming. When I think about I have a box of letters from, I'm getting emotional talking about it, but from about 100 friends, just little notes of, hang in there, stuff like that, get well soon, that sort of stuff. And they're all friends, been friends of mine throughout my life, and people from out of town and in town, people I don't see a ton of, some of them anymore. And the people the women that put it together, I love dearly. I know them, but they're not my best friends, you know. I don't see them, you know, not who I'm going out to dinner with a lot of times. And, but I'll be damned if they didn't just jump in and do something, you know. And
we have to do something.
Yeah.
If that's like the one thing, you know, we have to do something. We have to show up for one another and not be afraid and jump into the fray.
Yeah.
Because guess what? I use this analogy if it's like the relay race, and you know, you have the baton in your hand, but ultimately it's going to be passed. And so we're constantly having to, we don't know where we are in our lives on the track.
Yeah.
At some point you're going to be holding the baton. Yeah. And so we all have to kind of show up for one another. Yeah,
and this realization of all the struggle and suffering that a lot of the people that I know and love have come through, you know, I gave that talk at MBA, and a lot of people reached out and had a lot of nice things to say. And a couple of them, you know, I was very honest, and I just was like, man, I'm sorry I wasn't there when you were going through it, you know, had cancer or whatever. And one of the friends had a really good, you know, a great response. He said, it's not about keeping score. Mm-hmm. He's like, you know, I wasn't a great friend for you during this. You know, it's not about keeping score. It's just about getting better.
Right.
You know?
And getting better.
Just getting better and you know, seeing more opportunities and to make an impact and doing that and helping people. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, I kind of had framed this whole year as this a year of living soulfully. Mm-hmm. So it's like trying to figure out, like, how do we live lives that feel deep and consequential and also are fun and have joy, you know, where we feel like we're living these weighty, I think in the Bible it says a fullness of life, but these weighty, like really like important, sacred lives. And, you know, but I guess that's why I'm asking you, like, now, like, you've been given this life where the scales have come off your eyes and you're like, holy moly, like, I was at the edge, I could have stepped over. I'm back over here on this side. And so now I don't know how much time I have. Like, I don't know if, you know, I have 50 years, 70 years, whatever. None of us have any idea what our day is. What will I do? Like, what am I determined to make as my life?
Yeah. Well, there's certain things that I'm not 100% sure of just yet, you know, in terms of an ultimate vision or goal for my life. But as, you know, again, going back to, you know, live in the moment, you know, again, it sounds so cliche, but again, and not taking for granted, just appreciating the little moments, you know, driving through and trying to bring other people into that a little bit too. I mean, you know, there was a day last, I don't know when it was, February or something, and it was just a gorgeous day, you know, sort of first breath of spring, and, you know, driving with my windows down, and a day like today, maybe a little bit warmer, and, you know, it was just a great day.
Just a great day. And name that day.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, and I just texted a bunch of my friends. I was like, this is a great freaking day. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, a few of the guys were like, yeah, it really is. And, you know, and just trying to appreciate those moments with my children and my wife. I mean, my wife and I just got back from the beach, you know, 4 or 5 days. First time we've gotten alone, you know, since we had Annabelle, which is a long time, for more than like 2 days, and just trying to appreciate those moments, and I, you know, I think you have to learn how to appreciate the tough moments too. You know, I was with my son working on his homework the other night, and he was frustrated and crying, and you know it was just it was a sweet moment, you know, and just trying to appreciate those. You know, I try to journal a little bit.
I was going to ask you that because you had any like disciplines that you were doing, writing things down, or? Yeah,
you know, I'm not great at that. I want to be a lot better. You know, my journal is littered with, well, you know, hope to do better this time. You know, hopefully I'd like to get in and, you know, have another journal entry next week, and it'll be like 4 months later. You know, this is what I did the last 4 months. Which, of course, it takes longer, and then you're like, I don't want to do that again. So you don't do the journal. But so I'm starting the smaller, this is, trying to just a few thoughts here and there, little moments, something my children said, or, special moments of a beautiful day or whatever, and just kind of trying to get that down. I mean, a lot of people talk about, and I have trouble with this, but another sort of tactic, a lot of people talk about just finding 3 things you're thankful for every day.
Yeah, you start your day with 3 things.
And, I've tried that a little bit. That's hard, because I think the key for me, and the key thing is to get beyond, I'm thankful for my kids and my family and that I'm living and those kinds of things, and get into like, I'm thankful that the birds chirping outside my, just the little things, and being intentional about what's really happening and that you can be thankful for.
Have you made any like significant changes in your life? Like, have you subtracted some things from your life that you're like, you know what, that just isn't necessary. I don't want that as part of my life anymore. Or have you added on anything into your life and this is going to be an essential for our family. Like, we are doing this.
So at work, there was a pretty significant change in my job function, which was really good for me. And
gave you some more time and flexibility?
More time, more flexibility, less dealing with stuff I don't like to deal with, and stuff that was just, had been a drag on me for a long time,
Yeah, and it's funny because my friend that's going through cancer right now, that's one thing she said. She said, we get into this rut where we think it has to be this way. Yeah. We have to do those things. We have to go to that meeting, or we have to schedule ourselves till we're just so scheduled out, and we have to be so busy. And actually, when you're, stopped in your tracks, you realize like, oh my goodness, like it's all about me choosing. Yeah. I get to choose how I spend my time. And if it's really a soul drain, then I have to choose to push it to the side and put something in there that is going to increase my joy, or at least make me feel like my time is significant and meaningful. And
what I was dealing with a lot of stuff that was really sapping me, just like this is miserable.
Yeah.
And
what else? Anything with your wife or children?
Well, I'll tell you, yeah. So this, with my wife, certainly I think for her, you need to talk to her, but I think at the end of the day, our relationship is better. It took, it got worse before it got better.
Right.
But, it was real tough for her. Maybe tougher for her than it was for me, in a lot of ways. But I feel like we're in a better place. We're just more open with one another, and again, just able as a couple just to look at our life and say, what gives us joy and what doesn't, and
it's a conversation. See, maybe that's what it is too, John. It's just having the conversation.
Yeah.
It's being a little more, I'm kind of a fly by the seat of your pants, and so I'm just constantly moving with things. And I'm realizing, though, that, I kind of have to say, you know what, this is just not working in my life.
Yeah.
And I need to change it. Or, I really am happy when I'm doing this, and I feel peaceful, and I feel good, and so I need to, make that happen more in my life. I need to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think we're, doing a better job of that kind of stuff. It happens kind of little by little. I wouldn't say there's any great big,
watershed
moment. Because for us, it's been a process, of kind of just getting used to this. And, for her, but it was really difficult, right? For her, it was like, and I'd be like, hey, it's going to get better. I'm not going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I don't think. And I think it's going to get better. And it was hard for her to see that. Or, it was hard for me to see that, but I was doing it every day, and I was the one who was feeling like this feels better than it did last week, and those kinds of things. But she was was stuck kind of in the moment.
So we've changed chairs because of the sun.
Right. It was driving
and you were
us away.
Super adaptable.
That's right.
So you did this amazing YouTube. It's been on YouTube. So many people have watched it. You're speaking to a group of high school boys. And I was so struck by, you said, I did not know how to love, or I did not know what love was before what happened to me.
Yeah.
And that has all changed. So what is your definition of love?
So I think, the love for me was a feeling, right? I knew when I loved someone or I loved something, okay? But it's a word that's tossed out a lot, right? Love thy enemy, love someone. How do we, I was in a Bible study this morning, and just being able to, seeing how people leaned into our lives and just jumped in and helped, all of a sudden it kind of became clear to me that really love is the action of reaching into people's lives and doing things for them, and that's where you start. The feeling will come with that in a lot of instances, right? But that's how you do that, right? I mean, that's the action of love. It's not a feeling, it's an action, and that's what it takes. And there's so many, and it was illustrated to me and demonstrated to me by the number of people who did that for us. And it just kind of was somewhat of a revelation, to me, or an epiphany, if you will, as I was, like I said, I had a lot of time to think about things in the hospital. And so that's where it all is.
It's like a feeling, but you put muscle behind it.
It is. And
you put your soul behind it.
I think, ultimately, go into marriage conferences occasionally and things, you talk about loving your wife and loving your husband and what that's like in a married couple, and you're supposed to die to yourself and, give all yourself to your wife, and she's supposed to do the same thing. Therefore, you become selfless, loving each other, giving up yourself to love each other. And it's the kind of, you're never going to get there, right? We're sinful, so you're never going to be perfect. But the more you try, the better it is. And, it's kind of that, I look at that way in the world, with that kind of a feeling with love, is like, if we could all just try, that, again, die to yourself. What can I do for somebody else today? And if we all did that, and we'd never get there, right? I mean, that's kind of impossible. We're all selfish.
Yeah, but just even the trying, imagine what would happen.
And what a beautiful picture that would be.
What a beautiful picture.
And so, you just, I want to try to do my part. And the reality is, it's really hard for me. You talked about being awkward, and that's a big thing for me. So many people who've been through struggles, again, when I go back and I tally the people that I haven't really loved in the past because of the struggles that they've gone through, it's because
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Sometimes loving is uncomfortable.
It's like, you know what? They probably have better friends that are really kind of loving on them or doing something for them, and that might be awkward. They might feel awkward, or I might feel awkward, or it's just probably not my place, or I'll go do that again some other time or whatever.
Well, and the other thing is I always tell people when people call and ask me, gosh, what should I do for this person? And I say, handwritten note.
Yeah.
Because then they have it tangible, and if they're sitting in a hospital room, guess what? They're going to probably read it 20 times in that day.
Right.
It really is tangible hope. Write the letter, put in the mail, and let them receive it. It really makes a difference. These little acts of kindness that are tremendous, that get people through things.
Yeah, the difficulty, I'll just illustrate the difficulty that I had. Again, this is, not that long ago. And a friend of mine's dad passed away, and, it was the day he died, and this is one of my best friends. And I called him, and he didn't answer his phone. I texted him, and he didn't text me back. And, I'm like, this is, I was at a conference, a business conference. And I'm like, that night, I'm like, I really should go over there. But then, that's going to be really awkward. What if I go over there and he really doesn't want to see me? He hadn't called me back, he hadn't texted me back or anything. Again, I'm just wrestling with myself in the head, just stupid, And then I went. I finally was like, just go.
Go, right.
Can go alone with another good friend. And it's like, yeah, of course. yes.
Yeah,
come,
you show
go,
up,
yeah,
right?
Just go. Yeah,
You go.
know, it's like,
I know.
oh, hey, great to see you. And but the difficulty that we all have, I think, or maybe it's just me, of kind of saying, you know what, just jump off the cliff and do something. You know, it's a constant struggle.
Okay, so you were brought to that edge. Mm-hmm. Do you have a different feeling about death, having known that you almost died? Are you more afraid of it now? Are you peaceful about it? Did something happen through your whole ordeal where you felt like everything was going to be all right and there was life after?
I'm not scared of death. For me, I'm not scared of death. I'm scared of going to the hospital again. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. Like, I do not want to do that again. Right. Where death gets me is the pain that it leaves behind for my children and my family. Like that, I'm scared of. Like, what's it? Not that I'm some great thing or anything, but what's life going to be like for them when I'm gone? And could, I don't want that to happen sooner than it needs to happen. Right. But for me, I'm comfortable with dying, and I believe that I'm going to go be with God and be in heaven, and I think that's obviously a very important piece of that piece
of faith and
the faith,
the whole thing,
the
right?
Belief, yeah. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, like, I'm not afraid of dying. But I do wonder, what will that leave when I'm gone? And that scares me.
So for my year of living soulfully, clearly I look at you and I'm like, boy, is he living soulfully. Now, he's paid a high price to get to this. Not that you weren't living soulfully before, but what does that mean to you, to live soulfully?
I hate to repeat myself, but I think being just more aware of what's going on with other people, not yourself. Certainly you can't lose sight of yourself. Well,
and it's important because you're diligently taking care of yourself right now. We talked about it. You were at the hospital getting an infusion on Tuesday. You're like diligently taking care of yourself because you want to live. Right. And you've got 4 kids that are under the age of 12, and you've got a wife who has already been through it.
Right.
So you're diligently trying to take care of yourself, but I understand it's...
Yeah, and I had a doctor tell me, I was like, I didn't know whether I should come to talk to you about this. And he was like, given everything you've been through, you should come talk to me. Don't hesitate. But being aware of what's going on with other people and being in the moment and being present and trying to just appreciate the little things that are going on in your life, because if you get caught up in looking, which is very easy to do, and I do it every day, and looking forward and what's coming, what do I need to plan for? If you just get too much into that, you're not going to live soulfully.
Right, you're not.
You're going to be, you're going to be off, and you're going to be striving for something that you're really never going to get, really.
Right, and I want you to tell people. Like, you do counseling.
Yes. You
do counseling with marriage counseling too.
Yes.
You go to a Bible study.
Yeah, I have a couple men's groups.
Yeah, you do men's groups. So you're like, to live soulfully is a discipline.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
You're taking care of business.
No, yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So one of the things that I've prayed about as going through this is, given a second chance in life, Lord, help me serve you. Mm-hmm. Show me what I need to do. Help me serve you in this world, and so I have sought out things that people that I think fill my soul, and that have 2 men's groups, 2.5 really, if you want to count one, and I go to see a counselor. I have lunch with my pastor once a month. I go to church. And
anything you do like that's different with your children or with your wife?
Nothing that's, well, my wife, got some good advice of, and I think this is right. A lot of it's tactical. So it's like, it was like, you need to find 20 minutes a day to talk to your wife. And, it could be not watching TV, not with other people, like just you two. It could be over making lunches or whatever it is you do, but just talk about what's going on in your life. So 20 minutes a day, and then once a week, find a cheap dinner, easy date that you can do, quick, whatever. Once a month, a nice dinner. Once a quarter, a weekend away, and once a year, a more elaborate kind of, vacation. And that if you can't do all of that, the 20 minutes a day is actually the most important. So,
most important.
And so, we've tried to do that, and that, that again, it's a helper.
Yeah, it does.
You
have to do the work,
connection,
right?
Yeah.
I know. I think it's like, it's not one of those things where you're, Peter Pan and, you just manifest this likeness of being and living soulfully. It's like very intentional living.
Yeah.
And we both have said it's an imperfect process, but you've got to be part of the process, right? You've got to do the work.
Yeah, you got to do the work. And that's what it's a sports analogy. You hear Nick Saban talk about it. It's
Are you
about
going
the process.
Alabama football? No.
It's about the process. Or James Franklin, same thing. And I think you read. It's kind of funny, but you read so many like job descriptions. We want goal-oriented people, and really, I've kind of flipped my switch on that. And like, you really need people who are all about the process of doing the right things. And if you do the right things on a day-to-day basis, you're going to
magic's going to happen, right? Yeah, you are going to get where you need to go.
And so I've tried to do a little bit of that, and
I'm just curious your children's perspective on what's going on in your household.
My 12-year-old, he had to write a little paper, and I read it, and he talked a little bit about that, and he would never. We haven't talked about it.
Right.
He wrote it in a paper, so that was was cool to see. My 10-year-old Charlie, he's probably been the most outwardly affected by it. I think he was. He's probably our most sensitive child, and my second surgery, the amputations were happening on the first day of school, and he couldn't go to school. I mean, Ann Lacey didn't know why, but he just burst out crying. It was basically hysterical at school, and it was because of me.
Yeah, because it's hard to see your parents struggle.
He knew I was going in for another surgery, and he was scared that the same thing was going to happen.
Right.
And he's had some issues of, hey, my dad's not like all the other dads, and why is that? And
better.
Things, right? Well, hopefully.
So you need to start doing the rhetoric. I am a superhero. Right. I am a superhero.
Right. But I think the resilience thing for them, I think something that'll come if it hasn't already,
Well, you're walking the walk, so it's over time of them seeing you,
Yeah.
So every week I sign off my blog, Live in Hope, because for me it's like the one thing that I think we all need. It's hard to hold on to it sometimes. And so I just wonder, what is your definition of hope?
Well, the definition of hope for me would be an expectation that there are better things ahead, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't say, we've talked a lot about hope in this world and what that means, and there is that. Ultimately, we're all dying. We're all going to die.
I know.
And I think they talk about the ultimate hope is to live with God and Christ in heaven, and that's what we have through Christ and God. And so that is a hard one. That's a tough one to wrap your head around. But if you have that, I think it makes getting through the stuff, the muck,
easier
and better. just easy, a little bit easier. Not a lot, but easier.
Well, I just read this book. I think the title is The Wedding by John Berger, but there's a quote in it. I read it actually last night. We're all standing on a ledge, but always with hope.
Right.
So we're all in this fragile place as human beings. But what God promises us is you will always have hope.
That's right. That's right. I think it's just, I totally agree with that. I think it's important to know that the hope is not in this world. There is hope in this world.
Mm-hmm. The ultimate.
But there's more than that.
Right.
Too.
There is more.
And that's pretty amazing.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Thanks.